Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we bring you a powerful journey of betrayal, self-discovery, and the strength to walk away from toxic relationships. Lena spent years believing that family meant unconditional love, but what she learned through heartache and manipulation changed everything. This is a story of how one woman chose herself over the demands and exploitation of those she once called family. It's a story of courage, liberation, and the profound lessons life teaches us when we finally learn to set boundaries. Stay tuned as we dive into Lena's incredible journey. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story. I had lived for 35 years, carrying the belief that family was where you found comfort, love, and unconditional support. But that belief was shattered one evening. Over a dinner table filled with flickering candles, a soft vintage chandelier glowing gently, and the rich aroma of stew that seemed to fill the air with warmth. The scene was perfectly orchestrated to lull me into a sense of nostalgia, of family. But it was all a trap, and I walked right into it without suspecting a thing. 2 weeks before, I had received a call from my mother. Her voice was sweeter than usual, almost coaxing. "Lena, you should come home for dinner. It's been so long since we've all gathered together." I hesitated, a feeling of uncertainty creeping into my mind. Over the past decade, I had grown accustomed to my parents' affection being conditional. They only reached out when they needed something, usually money. I had almost stopped expecting anything more. But still, a small part of me clung to the hope that, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe they truly missed me. So, I left behind my busy schedule in San Francisco and drove to my childhood home in Sacramento. I arrived with hope in my heart, ready to put the past behind me, ready to believe that family meant more than just taking and taking without giving back. But that hope crumbled within minutes of sitting down at the table. Just to avoid any misunderstandings later, Ethan, my younger brother, spoke calmly, his voice smooth and rehearsed, as though he had been practicing this moment in his head. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, an air of quiet satisfaction about him. Next to him, Chloe, my younger sister, twirled a golden strand of hair around her finger, her lips curling into a smug smirk as if she had just won some grand bet. I set my fork down, the stew my mother had prepared suddenly tasting like sand in my mouth. "What?" I asked, my voice dry but controlled, my eyes darting between the two of them. My mother sighed, the sound heavy, as if the words she was about to speak weighed her down. "Your father and I have finalized our will." She looked at me with what could only be described as a mixture of resignation and coldness. "Everything we own, this house, the lakefront villa in Tahoe, all of it, will go to Ethan and Chloe." Those words, spoken with such finality, fell between us like a knife, slicing through the space in the room and cutting straight into my chest. I turned to my father, hoping, praying, that he would defend me. But he didn't. He only lowered his head, staring into his glass of wine, offering no disagreement. I took a deep breath, trying to make sense of it all. "Why?" I asked, forcing the words out, the confusion thick in my throat. Ethan shrugged nonchalantly, his voice laced with a trace of amusement. "Because you don't need it. Lena, you have your own company, your own house, you've got a stable life. Mom and Dad think Chloe and I need more support." "Support?" I nearly laughed, though the sound that escaped my lips was hollow, devoid of humor. "Support? Chloe, you're 28 and haven't held a job for more than 6 months. Ethan, how many times have you switched majors in college? 5, 6? I scoffed, the anger rising in me like a tidal wave. "And Mom and Dad have been paying for every single tuition fee." I could feel my heart pounding with fury, my body shaking with the weight of it all. My mother crossed her arms, her gaze hardening, her words sharp. "Lena, there's no need to overreact. Your father and I have thought this through. You don't need these assets. But Ethan and Chloe need a solid foundation to build their lives on." I wanted to scream, to shout, to throw the table across the room. But instead, I laughed bitterly. "A foundation? And what about the money I've spent helping you pay off the mortgage?" The times I covered the utility bills and home repairs? What about the $40,000 I invested to renovate the Tahoe villa? I looked at her, my voice thick with disbelief. Does no one remember that? Chloe's eyes twinkled with mockery as she chuckled. Oh, so you're keeping tabs on every penny? That's disappointing. Lena, you're rich. Do you really need to be so stingy? Stingy? The word hit me like a slap in the face. My vision blurred with anger as I stared at her. No, Chloe, this isn't stinginess. This is fraud. This is exploitation. My mother slammed her hand down on the table so forcefully that the glasses nearly toppled over. Enough. Lena, stop acting like a victim. We did this not because we don't love you, but because we love all our children. Love? The word felt foreign coming from her lips. I could barely recognize it anymore. I felt a cold rage begin to spread through me. For years, I had believed that family was where love resided, where sacrifices were made in the name of mutual support. But now, as I looked at them, I realized the truth. I wasn't their daughter. I was just an ATM. And now that I was no longer useful to them, they were ready to discard me without a second thought. Lena, you're acting like a child who just had their favorite toy taken away. Ethan said, his voice dripping with condescension. Everyone here is an adult. You need to learn to accept reality. His words didn't infuriate me anymore. They only served as a bitter reminder of the lies I had been living under for so long. I had been deceived. My family didn't see me as part of the unit. I was nothing more than a source of money. A convenient tool for their desires. I slowly placed my hands on the table, gripping the edge of the cloth. I took a deep breath, letting the anger settle, before meeting their eyes again. For the first time in my life, I saw them for what they truly were. And in that moment, I realized something that would change everything. I didn't need them, and they didn't need me. That night, everything I had believed in came crashing down, and I knew that my life would never be the same again. Leaving that dinner felt like stepping out of a dream I had clung to for years, a dream that family was everything. A place of support and love. But as I drove away from my childhood home, that illusion shattered, and the weight of betrayal pressed heavily on my chest. I had always believed that no matter what, family would be there for me, that we would be there for each other. But as I reflected on the evening's events, I realized that was never the case. I had been the only one ever making sacrifices. The rest of them had only known how to take. The drive back to San Francisco was agonizing. Every mile I put between myself and my family felt like a mile further from the person I once was. The one who believed in unconditional love. In the ties that bind. But now I understood that I wasn't just walking away from them. I was walking away from a lifetime of being used. For years, I had played the role of the provider. The responsible one. I had kept the family afloat financially. Despite their constant demand for more, I had helped pay off the mortgage when they were close to losing the house. I covered their bills, utilities, repairs, even extravagant gifts my mother would ask for during the holidays. I invested nearly $50,000 into renovating the Tahoe villa, all because they told me they wanted to keep it as a family asset. But now, when I needed them, when I needed to be seen as something more than a source of money, they turned their backs. At first, I tried to tell myself it wasn't just about the money. It wasn't about the inheritance or the material things they now seemed to prize over me. It was the way they spoke to me. The way they dismissed everything I had done for them. They didn't see me as a daughter anymore. They saw me as a walking wallet. Someone who would always be there to fix their problems, to fill their gaps. And now that I was no longer providing for them, I was disposable. When I arrived back at my apartment, it was as if the weight of the entire situation hit me all at once. I collapsed onto the couch, completely drained. I didn't even have the energy to be angry. Only exhaustion remained. I opened my banking app and saw the numbers. The bills I had paid. The tuition I had covered. The various expenses I had carried over the years. It all added up to more than $2,000 a month. That didn't even include the extra gifts I had purchased or the vacations they invited me on. Only for me to end up paying for everything. A wave of betrayal surged through me. I had given them so much, my time, my energy, my money, and yet, when I needed the same support, when I asked for fairness, they turned on me. The thought of all the sacrifices I made for them, only to be cast aside, filled me with a bitter sense of injustice. I made a decision then. I was done. The next morning, I cancelled every recurring payment I had set up for them. My heart raced as I tapped the button. The confirmation flashed on my screen. Successfully cancelled. A strange sense of relief washed over me. It felt as though I had severed an invisible chain that had bound me for years. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had control over my own life again. But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Sure enough, the calls began almost immediately. My mother's number flashed on the screen. I ignored it. The next call came not long after, followed by a third and a fourth. My mother didn't give up. By the fifth call, I silenced my phone and let it go to voicemail. I didn't want to hear her apologies or excuses. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. But as I sat there, sipping my coffee, I felt a cold bitterness settle in my chest. They had never truly loved me for who I was. I was only useful to them when I could provide something. The moment I stopped giving, they stopped caring. As the day wore on, I received more messages, more desperate pleas from my family. They tried to guilt-trip me, to make me feel like the villain for cutting ties. Ethan and Chloe sent angry texts, calling me selfish, accusing me of abandoning them. They didn't see the truth. They didn't see how their greed had consumed them. But I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to let them make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. The sacrifices I had made for them had gone unnoticed, unappreciated, and now, for the first time, I was taking back control of my life. The hardest part wasn't the financial separation, it was the emotional distance. I had been so deeply entwined with them, believing that family meant everything. But now, the reality was clear. Family wasn't just about blood. It was about respect, about mutual care, and about giving as much as you receive. And for the first time in my life, I understood that I deserved more than just to be their ATM. I sat there for a long while, letting the anger and sadness mix into a strange sort of peace. I had finally drawn a line in the sand, and I was no longer willing to cross it. They had pushed me to the edge, and now, there was no going back. 3 weeks passed after I severed all ties with my family, and in those weeks, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. The constant guilt-tripping calls and the endless barrage of messages stopped. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't weighed down by demands, accusations, or the endless need to justify myself. I could finally breathe again. I threw myself into my work, focusing on projects I had put on hold for far too long. The long hours that once felt draining were now fulfilling, and I found joy in creating and succeeding on my own terms. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, and I could finally live for myself without the looming presence of my family's expectations. But deep down, I knew this peace wouldn't last forever. I had been naive to think they would just accept my decision and let me go without a fight. And sure enough, I was right. It started with a message from my mother. Her number appeared on my phone one afternoon, and I felt a pang of hesitation. My fingers hovered over the screen, and for a moment, I almost considered answering, but I quickly reminded myself why I had walked away in the first place. I ignored the call, and the floodgates opened. The messages started coming in, one after another, each one more frantic, more desperate than the last. "Lena, please call me back. You don't understand how much we need you," my mother wrote, followed by another. "Your father is devastated. Don't do this to the family." They weren't messages of love or concern. They were pleas for me to return, to resume my role as their financial lifeline. I didn't respond. The guilt, which had once threatened to swallow me whole, no longer had any power over me. I had given them so much for so long, but it was never enough. Now, they were using emotional manipulation, trying to make me feel as if I was abandoning them. But the truth was that they had already abandoned me long ago. Long before I decided to walk away. Then the calls started coming from Ethan and Chloe. "You've destroyed the family," Ethan texted me. You're just mad because you didn't get anything in the will. You've always been selfish. Chloe's messages were no different. Full of accusations, laced with bitterness. They couldn't see what I had seen. They couldn't see how their greed had driven me away. They were angry because I stopped enabling them. Because I stopped providing for their every need. A cold laugh escaped my lips as I read their messages. They were still playing the same game. Still pretending to be victims. But this time, I wasn't going to be their pawn. Later that day, Parker, my younger brother, called. I debated whether or not to answer. But I finally picked up. Prepared for whatever tirade he had for me. What the hell do you think you're doing? Lena, he snapped. His voice filled with venom. You can't just walk away like this. You owe us. No, Parker, I replied calmly, though my voice was edged with finality. I don't owe you anything. I've spent years paying for your failures. For your poor choices. I've given you more than anyone should ever have to. But that ends now. I'm not your ATM anymore. You're disgusting, he retorted. You're just a greedy leech. And now you're abandoning the family because you didn't get your inheritance. You think you can walk away without consequences? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. This isn't about money, Parker. This is about respect. Something I've never gotten from any of you. Don't think you're getting away with this. He threatened, his voice cold. But I didn't care. I hung up the phone and sat there for a moment. My mind racing. I realized that despite their attempts to guilt trip me, despite their threats, I had already won. I had broken free from their manipulation. And nothing they said could change that. The peace I had found in those 3 weeks was priceless. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself. And that, more than anything, was the most freeing feeling in the world. I had walked away from the family that had always used me. And I was finally free to live my own life. No more guilt. No more manipulation. Just me, standing on my own, ready to embrace whatever the future had in store. But even as I savored my newfound freedom, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. My family had already shown me that they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. They might not have understood it yet, but I knew they would come after me again. But this time, I was ready. Months passed, and my life had transformed into something I could never have imagined. The freedom I gained from cutting ties with my toxic family was a gift that kept on giving. It wasn't easy at first. There were moments when I still questioned whether I had done the right thing. But those moments grew fewer as I rebuilt my life. Piece by piece, without the burden of manipulation or guilt hanging over me, I rediscovered who I was. Who I had always been, but had been too afraid to let show. I focused on my career, poured my energy into projects that were fulfilling and meaningful. I found joy in simple things again, like walking through the city with no one asking for anything from me, or spending time on hobbies I had once given up. And then, one day, I met Alex. It wasn't love at first sight, but something about him felt different. He didn't want anything from me. Didn't need anything. He just wanted to be with me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have to prove my worth. Eventually, the news of my family's struggles reached me. They were all paying the price for the lifestyle they had become accustomed to. A life funded by my sacrifices. I felt no guilt, no sympathy, only a sense of relief that I had walked away when I did. I didn't need them anymore. I had found something much more valuable, myself. The strength to say no, to set boundaries, and to walk away from people who took without giving. This wasn't just a story about betrayal. It was a lesson in self-respect and the power of choosing your own happiness. If you've ever felt trapped in a situation like Lena's, remember, setting boundaries is not selfish. It's a form of self-love. And sometimes, walking away from toxic people is the only way to find true freedom. If you want to hear more life stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more real stories of courage, healing, and growth.